This is going to be a very different video for me. In a climate where the indie video game market is overflowing with gimmick games and constant cash-in attempts on popular trends, it can get pretty hard to tell the difference between a genuine product seeking to do justice to a creative idea and, well, one of those other instances. In spite of that, there is one game that caught my attention and simply would not let it go until I ventured into the world it was begging me to explore. A world that seemed to spill out with creativity and uniqueness every time I came across it until I couldn't resist it anymore. Please be advised that although this game doesn't really have a story per se, its primary draw is the locations and set design you'll see, so I feel I should warn you about spoilers now because you'll see pretty much everything this game has to offer throughout this video. Although there are some things I will leave out in case you want to go play it for yourself. So with that said, come take a swim with me as we dive into the abstract experience that is pools. Liminality. To be liminal. This word holds two separate definitions: of relating to or situated at a sensory threshold, barely perceptible or capable of eliciting a response, or of relating to or being an intermediate state, phase, or condition, in between, transitional. An empty mall. It feels like there should be people there, like there should be life and bustling movement and excitement. But there's only a void left from the unpleasant realization that although all of that is gone, the environment for it remains, in a transitional state. It's talked about quite a lot these days. I'd honestly go so far as to call it a pop culture trend, maybe even overrated at times, yet anytime I see it, my interest is piqued. The Backrooms, the SCP Foundation, and really just the entirety of analog horror all have the kind of mass appeal that genuinely confuses me. Not because I don't get the fascination, I very much do, but because it's a sort of celebration of the unusual and unsettling. This kind of weird and abstract media very seldom finds mass appeal, and when it does, it's normally long after that success can go to the benefit of those who created it. Silent Hill is a great example, a series utterly beloved by millions to the point where you can't even watch a video about a horror game without it coming up. Yet, if the success the series has now had been there when the games were releasing, things would have gone very differently for the brand. The same could be said of Twin Peaks, another very unusual and unsettling piece of media that is adored in retrospect, but struggled when it first met the market. Enter liminal horror, something I've enjoyed for roughly a decade, both due to its odd and unsettling nature and the way it plays with the expectations of your day-to-day brain when you see it. I've seen the idea of liminal horror used in a ton of media in recent years, and more often than not, it winds up being a cheap gimmick at worst, and little more than a neat environment to contain the same collectathon run from a pursuer enemy style game that's been saturating the horror game market in the past 12 years or so at best. So you can understand my fascination when I saw footage of the liminal horror game simply called Pools. My first reaction was one of fatigue. Oh, here we go, another backroom-styled horror game where you run around chasing keys, pressing buttons, and hiding in cabinets from a pursuer. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against games like that. In fact, there's a good few of them I really enjoy. It was just the cynic in me that had an unwarranted knee-jerk reaction to the sight of another Backrooms horror game that made me presume it would be an uninspired attempt to cash in on a trend, rather than a genuine and artistic addition to the subgenre it was contributing to. So imagine my surprise when I saw the developer readily advertising that the game featured no enemies. That's right, this game features no pursuers or chase sequences, not even another being to interact with for pretty much the entire game. Yet, even after reading it, all I had were doubts. This game was marketing itself as having no enemies because there is absolutely an enemy that shows up to catch you off guard halfway through or something. After all, if there are no enemies, what the hell are we even doing the whole time? That's the real magic of pools, isn't it? It's not often we get a game that features so little combat, although this certainly isn't the first game to attempt this. There have been plenty of games that focus almost entirely on the experience of soaking in the atmosphere and immersing yourself to unravel the mysteries of this strange new world that felt no need to rely on combat as a primary mechanic, and in some cases, not a mechanic at all. I have to admit, however, it does feel rather rare that a game billing itself as a horror title would feature no semblance of conflict, much less combat. So, what is Pools? Developed by an indie studio called Tensori, Pools is a short video game inspired by the likes of the internet sensation called the Backrooms and the liminal art collection called Dream Pools by modern artist Jared Pike. Although the developers call it a walking simulator, I think it would be more accurate to call it a sensory stimulator. Every facet of Pools is meticulously designed with the intention of tickling your senses. At times, the atmosphere can feel thick and oppressive. Others, it feels relaxing and serene. But it always feels off. Every new room you see, every statue, every object, everything feels off. This is partially because of the liminality, but make no mistake, Pools is trying to unsettle you. It might not be trying to scare you, but it wants you to feel uneasy, and it does go to some lengths to achieve that goal. Although Pools is technically a video game, in practice, it's really more of an interactive art piece. There are no puzzles to solve, levers to pull, buttons to press, or enemies to dodge. The only thing you do is walk. Although it can be easy to get lost in this game, it's not hard to get your bearings and find the way forward either. The game wants you to see what's next, but it also wants you to feel like you earned it. How did we wind up here? Well, the game very much embraces the analog aspect of the horror that Backrooms media is known for. Pools is told through a camera, and every level is a disc we're simply viewing the playback of, or rather, a tape, which I'll just be calling them tapes from now on. Before we hit play on the first tape, we can hear someone climbing down a ladder and then suddenly going quiet. We're somewhere. The walls, floors, and ceilings are all made of tile, and all we can hear is the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above us. Just ahead is a room with a shallow pool, one that's almost unassuming. Beyond that, another room with an even bigger pool, and no noticeable change in the environment. The space is odd, and things become even stranger when the next area has some kind of map drawn on it in what looks like black paint. I looked at this map for some time, but I never managed to make heads or tails of it. I thought maybe it represented the layout of the level I'm on, but I found that didn't really make sense regardless of if you're considering it from a top-down or side view. Then there's some kind of painting on the wall of another room that makes even less sense. And we can even sit in this chair to look at it. Sitting in a chair is actually the only action we can really take in this game. There is a feeling of isolation, like we're all alone here, except we're not. There is someone else here, and they just pulled that ladder up. Where they went or why they did that are unknown, but we quickly forget about that when we enter into another room that's different. L'appel du vide. It means the call of the void. It's the sensation you feel when you see a big cliff, and part of you, in the back of your mind, simply wants to jump. It doesn't matter if you're happy, or sad, or fulfilled, or depressed. This sensation has been recorded as having been felt by millions regardless of their situation in life. Thoughts of turning your steering wheel straight off of a bridge when you're driving coming into your mind seemingly out of nowhere. It's something we all feel, but can't explain. And it's something that pulls, draws out of you on more than one occasion. Something our minds can't help but consider. The possibility. The what if. What if I jumped? The game won't let you die. There's so much more the game wants you to see, and it's going to ensure that there's no escaping it. So we press on, trying to find what else is awaiting us in this strange dream. A clock. That ticks in reverse. There are themes here. The constant audio sensation of the sloshing water, the open void to call us down, the clock that seems to go backwards, the rubber duck that sits alone on a shelf, seemingly out of place despite being more than fitting enough for a swimming pool environment. We are promised that we are in no danger here, but no matter where we go, it always feels like someone is watching us. And more than that, the occasional groans in the background make it sound as if there's something else down here with us. And I don't mean whoever pulled up that ladder. I mean something else, something worse. Something that doesn't like when we wander down the wrong passage. It isn't long after this that I found myself going in circles. I'd gone down different hallways and yet still kept ending up back in the same places as before. I thought maybe the answer to the exit was in that map on the wall, but so far as I could tell, the thing made no sense. Over and over again, I saw the same halls but never an exit, until something caught my attention. The duck. I had seen him before, but I hadn't actually gone down that hall yet. And no wonder, because it's so dark and narrow, it almost looks like you wouldn't be able to fit. But we do. And on the other side is a winding tile staircase. I'm going in circles again, but this time, I'm getting somewhere. A red plastic tube slide. One that looks exactly like something you'd see at a water park. After this, we end up entering a sort of labyrinth of tile tunnels as we have to navigate our way through it all. We are nearing the exit. I can feel it. If we can make our way through this maze of flooded hallways to... Oh, well, there's the exit sign there. So then we really aren't alone after all. But what was that thing, and how was it breathing underwater? It didn't seem to want to cause us harm, but rather just point us in the right direction. It's watching us. However isolated we may feel, that thing is keeping tabs on us to ensure we end up where we're supposed to be. Which seems to be... L'appel du vide. The call of the void. Tape 2 opens in a dark room as our character picks up their camera and begins to venture deeper into whatever this place is. The rooms of this tape are similar to what we saw on the first one, the same heavily tile-reliant designs filled with pools of various sizes located in various odd locations. As we arrive at a large circular room with a pool in the center, the game appears almost as if it is offering us a choice between one hall marked with a triangle and another marked with a circle. I choose the triangle. Deeper into this direction is when we encounter something new. A hallway full of lockers. This is the first time we've seen something like this in such a vast amount. The environments themselves are even getting bigger as well. Vast open chambers and hallways, almost like we're in a school or a college building. Then there's the darkness. A big hallway that doesn't lead anywhere, blocked only by the dark, and when we get too close to it... A black room, a void, whispering, calling to us. The next room makes it hard to see as we slowly wander our way through these halls until we come across another new thing. A statue, holding up a square shape of some kind. A box, perhaps? And following this is a locker room. The deeper into this dreamscape we go, the more varied things become. Every few rooms seems to bring with it something else to see, a new facet to consider. A lone swing, hanging by itself from a wire cable, and a green room with a gap separating us from where we need to go. We already know there's only one way across, except this time, the void answers back. A fake out, testing your faith, and one that leads you into a claustrophobic tunnel. Descending this spiral staircase, a pocket of what looks like air pushes through us. And at the bottom of this staircase is what looks like a diagram of the spiral staircase itself and two large rubber ducks. And a long water-filled hallway with submerged plastic white chairs and a speaker playing out some music. An oddly peaceful moment after some of the more unsettling things we've seen so far. At the end of this hallway is a statue with a broken head. Up ahead is a pool with a tube float, which is another new thing we haven't seen yet. Why now? Every step we take deeper into this dream leads us towards something new, and yet those steps always seem to keep leading down. The third tape opens into a hallway. It's dark, and there's 3 lights painted across the back wall. Somehow, the black tile walls with the white tile floors makes the water seemingly have a blue tint, which makes it all feel cold. Another hallway that seems to close in on you the farther down it you travel. This room holds a circular room filled with water tubs that seem almost suspended in animation. It doesn't look as though glass is holding it here, but like the water itself is, like there's something different about the gravity here. The impact that the graphical fidelity has on this game cannot be understated. This works because of how crisp and surreal everything looks, like the individual saunas accessible throughout this hallway, making things feel like they just went from cold to hot. This is the first time we've seen wood. These back rooms are changing in a way, offering us a new environment to... That's unexpected. This room is covered in various bathtub-like structures, not big enough to call a pool, and even featuring small rubber ducks. It feels as though we've moved from a swimming pool-inspired design into a polished bathroom-like design. This red tub almost seems to call to us, and it's clearly our only way through that wall, but before we go down it, look. Bathroom stalls. One even opened. This feels like confirmation to my suspicion. These rooms are changing, growing to show us something else. And yet the pools remain. Although if you'll notice the way these windows are, it almost feels like we're in a giant bathtub. The hot sound of steam permeates as we walk across wooden floors through another sauna. Bigger this time. The thought was creeping into my mind now. Is there more to this game than just a series of weird environments to look at? Mannequins, all standing before us, but still allowing us through. What we find beyond this hallway is what will really throw us through a loop. Gravity doesn't work the same here. Things start to feel different after that. We start walking up impossible hallways and down. We have to persevere to find what else awaits us in this place. A non-Euclidean staircase. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. What better way to express the existence of the impossible than with this famous architectural wonder? Before we can even finish taking in what we've just seen, the game throws us something far more simple and yet equally more bizarre. I can't tell if I'm unsettled or just confused. I feel like this place is trying to tell us something, but what? It's less than 10 seconds after leaving that room that the game reinforces that visual in a big way. Into a winding tunnel with black walls again, and after that, even deeper into a wooden maze. It can be easy to get lost here. Everything looks so similar. Everything except this. A staircase made of all black tile lined with faint white lights, and it's taking us down. We wake up in shallow water. Somehow, the camera still works. There's only one clear way out of this room, but it's blocked by some kind of... or maybe not. The narrow hall exits out into a narrow tile tunnel. Things are very dark here. There's lights everywhere, but they're so dim it doesn't seem to help. And then I see it. That's new. I've seen these mannequins before, but this, and on top of that, the house it's attached to, this is a lot at once compared to what we've seen before. Things are clearly getting amped up, and what's next is stairs. A lot of stairs, far more than we've seen so far. We're in another maze-like area now. Staircases and mazes every direction we look, forcing us to push through until finding this. Hard to say exactly what it is we're seeing here, but I mean, it's something. Another steam bubble. I'm not sure what these are, but they don't seem to remain obstructions. In this case, it's more of a guide, taking us somewhere almost unbelievable. giant heads and arms all laid out around the room, reaching and grabbing, one even swallowing one of the plastic slides. It's hard to look at something like this and not start to wonder if it all means something, or if it really is just a facet of the Backrooms trying to emulate the dimension it rests parallel to. Beyond this is something else. A hallway with a descending staircase. A void to call us down. And a huge room holding a centered art piece. A dozen or so mannequins, all in place to hold each other up. It would be spectacular if it weren't so off-putting. In the center of them all is another tube slide. And it takes us down. A big tile room and a pathway full of red bricks. A dark tile room and a knocked over plastic chair. A clock where time has stopped. This is the second to last tape, and I can already feel we're in for something unlike we've been shown so far. The red bricks return again, this time in a full room of their own. The pools remain a constant, but something about this feels different. The way the bright colored slides feel against the muted tone of the red bricks, it almost feels like we're outside, even though we can tell we're not. It invokes a feeling very similar to the other tapes, but not quite the same, and leaves me wondering again, is there a significance to these red bricks, or are we simply in another level of these back rooms? It isn't long, however, before the familiar white tiles return as we wade through this flooded bathroom stall hallway into a wooden building. Things are so bright here. The windows are all massive and allow light to pour across the layout of the surprisingly normal-looking room. The most uneasy thing about what we're seeing is how orthodox it appears. This is, of course, a fleeting feeling. Things may have felt new and foreign until now, but what I found at the end of this room shattered that feeling as sensations of familiarity washed over me. I've seen this before. Despite our perpetual descent, we seem to have ended up back at this non-Euclidean staircase, only now with the prospect of navigating it for ourselves. We've already seen, however, that gravity isn't the same here, and so we begin. The winding ups and downs take us through this distorted lens of reality until again that sensation of familiarity comes pouring back in. I've seen this before. All of this, it's all been connected. This idea that we've been progressing through deeper and deeper levels has been little more than a facade. We're still in the same place, the same level, just wandering around in different parts of one big labyrinth. And for this sensation to amplify here, in such a distorted perspective of optic reality, made the whole thing feel that much more uneasy. And that's when I saw it. He's still there. I'd almost forgotten about him, so overtaken with all of the things I'd seen, but he is still following me, watching me from a distance, never showing anything more than just his hands. And we keep going further and further down until green walls. Somehow, we've ended up in a sort of interior hallway, one with green wallpaper and fluorescent lights. Something about all of this feels even more empty than anything else we've seen. And the phone booths, so many of them lined up on the walls, decorating our path to what is one of the most outstanding visuals of the game. This room is enormous and features multiple tube slides and pulls dead center in its multiple level mall-like design. There's more to see though, and so we must press on. Through a hallway into a long series of hallways lined in patterns of black and white. Easy to get lost here, but after some searching, we do find the exit into a brighter room of a similar pattern, and a single escalator going up. And what we see on this escalator, in spite of everything we've seen, still surprised me. A giant smiling face, a pillar of plastic chairs, and on one pillar, a house, broadcasting some kind of message that I couldn't understand. And now we're back with the green wallpaper, and through a wooden door, the environment is changing, and it's turning into something totally different than the cold water-centric textures we've been seeing. It's almost starting to resemble a house. Music plays on a loudspeaker coming from this small house, and a big plastic tube slide is jetting from the side. And on that slide coming down here, I could see paintings. Real images, not distorted simulacrums, but real paintings. And if we push further down this tunnel, then Backrooms level 9, darkened suburbs, only these aren't dark, they're well lit. Bright even, until it all starts falling. down. We wake up inside of a house. It isn't clear how we got here, but someone or something is trying to tell us where we should go. The halls of this house seem normal at first, but of course, it isn't long before they become a parody of what a real house would ever look like. A porcelain face swallowing a pipe. 2 green chairs and a blank checkers board. A wooden door into a longer hallway filled with crevices, some occupied by the very same green chairs from before. It's a long way down. A blackened void waits below us, as if it's calling to us. L'appel du vide. Entering through a wooden door once again, we find ourselves back with the white tile of the earlier pool rooms. The familiarity almost offers us a sense of relief, as if seeing an old friend. This pool of these various tube floats seems to offer a strange sense of meaning. Although once again, I can't tell if I'm overanalyzing or if there is an intended insinuation with the usage of these floats. Another slide takes us further down, where we find ourselves approaching a giant sauna room. Steam floods over the camera, obscuring the lens with perspiration. And we find a window looking into an empty bedroom with a small children's slide. That settles it. This place is trying to tell us something. Further down, we see another window depicting a very simple dining room table with the very same plastic chairs we've been seeing all along, only for us to then end up inside of that room, which takes us to... Okay, so that's also new. A massive saw blade rests just over this plastic slide, as if daring us to try it. With few options left, I definitely heard that saw come on. We made it out, however, and so we're right back where we started? It was a circle. Let's try a different path. Now this looks like something. A neighborhood of impossible houses. A facet of level 9. True darkened suburbs, flooded by the pool rooms, it seems. It can be very easy to get lost in this part. We enter into what resembles an underground bunker. Beds built into the walls and steam pipes a constant presence. This was triggering even more questions until I saw something that completely threw me off. A painting of the exact room we're in. This isn't the first painting we've seen either. What is this? Where exactly are we? And now we're back to white tiles with 3 selectable escalators to choose from, and another big empty room opening into the void. I can feel the intensity is growing when I come across this tower beaming with windowed lights. Something is about to happen. We descend down into what I can only describe as a basement and follow these copper pipes attempting to find some kind of exit. At the end of this is a white room with a living room set, and upon a small love seat rests a lamb. This is the first living thing we've seen. A white lamb resting delicately upon the beige love seat. This means something. It has to, and the only way we're going to get close to more answers is by pressing forward. Forward into... a factory of mannequins being moved somewhere on an assembly line. Real moving parts happening right in front of us. This isn't a confused simulacrum, this is a very real and functioning mechanism. And even that isn't as unsettling as what awaits us in the next room. A giant game of checkers being played by two massive mannequins, and a host of seemingly distraught figures stand littered across the board as if waiting for their impending demise. I think I'm starting to get a picture of what's happening here. Flooded bunkers, factory assembly lines, games of checkers with objects made to look like real people. We get a small transitional section of the old familiar pool aesthetic before wandering into something so seemingly normal, it must demand all of our focus. A hallway of paintings on the walls as though it were an art gallery, some of which we've seen before, a few even in this very place. Children's drawings in crayon, soft environmental paintings, detailed memento mori oil paintings, photorealistic depictions of locations we've seen ourselves here in this place. The rubber duck on water, a sleeping cat in the hot sauna, a giant chair beside a painting of the same plastic white chair we've seen so many times up till now, and a giant rubber duck looming in the background. And another of a duck underwater, this time signed by someone. Lizzie. The name of the duck, perhaps, or the signature of the artist herself. And an empty picture frame with the word nothing scrawled across the wall behind it. This is almost too much at once. And then there's the last picture. It looks almost like a sketch of the pool rooms themselves. Then this next hallway is the same painting over and over again until we get to the very end and see a little girl with a flower and a large hand reaching out to take it. I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but do you hear that? A subway with a bed in the middle of the tracks. This might be one of those stories. We're obviously approaching the end of this, and what do we see but the very same statue from the painting we saw hung repeatedly in the last hallway. So there's some kind of symbolism happening right now, but the trick is trying to piece together exactly what that symbolism is. At this point, I'm not sure what this game could even show me that would catch me off guard. A concrete wall with some kind of pulsating flesh. What is that? There's more. It's like it travels up the whole tower, like something is living inside of this thing. Is that what we've been hearing moan this whole time? And we're right back to the white-tiled pool rooms again, like we never even left. At the end is a long tunnel with a drop, but instead of going down, the walls themselves provide us with safe passage forward to a ladder, like the very same ladder we fell down from when we arrived. Instead of falling down, we climb up a tunnel, just like the one we fell down from at the start. Is it over? Did we finally make it to the end of this place? Are we free? Oh, maybe that's why we felt as though we've been being watched this whole time. Another massive tile room, almost back to the ones we saw in the first tape, and a passage blocked off by warning signs, warning of a potential fall. We cross through this dark tunnel into a narrow hallway with wooden floors and sheetrock walls that seems to get smaller the further you try and navigate through it. But inside of this winding maze, a painting of the same smiling face we've seen before and two rubber ducks in top hats, each in one of the respective chair types we've seen before. And an army of mannequins following us, blocking our way, chasing us all the way out until... The final tape ends to reveal an old CRT and VCR on a wooden table. On that same table is a small mannequin, a drawing of the human body beside a human anatomy book, and a stack of other tapes. A hand reaches out to eject the old VHS from its VCR. A clock ticks loudly in the background. That is Pools. Despite only being an hour or two long, depending on how quickly you're able to find your way through it, there really are a lot of thought-provoking visuals on display in this game. It's honestly quite breathtaking at times. The first two tapes feel like introductions to the concept. The third and fourth tape feel like genuine executions of expressing surrealism and liminality. And the last two levels almost feel like they're trying to tell us a story of some kind. Like the real world is seeping into these backrooms. But what exactly is the story here, at the end? When I started this game, I did so under the impression that it was little more than an interactive art gallery, a series of interesting sets and events for the player to witness and appreciate. But is there more to it than that? Well, I'm not sure. As I played and pondered the different visuals we encountered, I had a variety of ideas. But it's hard for me to say anything for sure. My first theory I developed as we waded through the flooded bunkers after seeing the houses was that perhaps our character ended up here after slipping into the backrooms during a flood event, like a tornado or a hurricane. Then, after seeing the factory of mannequins and the massive checkers game played with those same mannequins, I started to think maybe it was referencing war. The underground bunker felt like something we'd see in a war, and the factory shifting soldiers and machines to prepare for engagement. Then, of course, the big players treating human lives like board game pieces, and the expressions of grief and horror on their faces mixed with the distraught posture led me to think I was on the right track. But then I saw the paintings. Paintings of various things, many of which we had seen already during our time here. The chairs, the ducks, the painting signed Lizzie. Are we playing as a woman? The scrawled word across an empty frame, the damning hand reaching to take the flower from a little girl. Maybe I've seen too many videos on indie horror games insisting upon covering topics like SA as a frequent for their underlying implicative theme, but seeing that painting immediately raised flags that we're dealing with another SA topic in a horror game. Then the bed on the subway track. I don't think I need to explain the implications of an oncoming train through a tunnel. Am I way off on this? Has my brain been fried from so many indie horror games dealing with these themes? I'm trying to make sense of what this game is trying to say, but the themes are so clashing. What about the saw hanging above a tube slide? The bright colors of plastic tube slides reinforces the idea of innocence at a water park, giving feelings of childlike carefree days. The little white lamb resting peacefully on a couch, a common metaphor for innocence as well as sacrifice. Juxtapose that with a giant saw ready to slice the plastic tube into pieces, and we're back with that same implication. The imagery of the rubber ducks giving the feeling of a child as well, and even more damning, the lone swing, a classic symbol of carefree, childlike, innocent fun. There are more than enough symbols here to make the leap to an SA implication, especially when we pair it all with that final painting we see. But it feels too obvious. And also, how does the checkers game fit in? And the factory? And what about the tower of pulsating flesh? And the ducks wearing top hats? And of course, the most important part, the tape at the end of it all simply called Pools ejected from a VCR on a table of anatomy paraphernalia. And then there's the hands. The hands that ejects the tape look eerily similar to the hands that seem to follow us throughout the rooms. But what does that mean? Does all of this really connect to form some kind of story? Is it the obvious theme I've put together here, or is it something else? Did I miss something? I racked my brain across the various things I had seen along the way. The porcelain statues and faces, various implications of tubes going down the throats of some of those faces. The factory, the sunken bunker, all of it, laying it out like pieces to a puzzle to try and form a bigger picture. And cyclically, this all led me back around to my initial theory from when I started. That it all adds up to the same thing. Everything we see, all of these experiences and visuals, it all means nothing. We are a wanderer in an art gallery, a tourist in a museum. We're a viewer watching a videotape. Pools gives you everything you need to manufacture your own ideas, to come up with a variety of meanings. And I could be wrong about this, but what I got from the experience was simply that the experience itself was worth getting. Maybe there's a deeper meaning underneath all of this imagery. There's certainly more than enough visuals here to make a case for it, but I'm left simply thinking that attempting to do so might be missing the point altogether. I wouldn't blame someone for wanting to take what I've come up with here and expand on it to reveal something far deeper than what I presented with a more fleshed out analysis. But something started to happen the more intensely I tried to analyze it all. I began to feel like just by trying to piece together some kind of narrative from this, I was on the verge of missing the forest for the trees. So I let it go. Stepped back and looked at it. Not the implications of it, just the experience itself. Pools does a wonderful job of keeping you interested, slowly introducing new ideas and elements at just the right time. Nearly every time the game is about to start incorporating a new idea into the main game, it shows a taste of it early. The diving board is shown first in the pit to nothing, then again to end the level. We're shown a room with suspended water to tell us that gravity here is different before we then begin to actually interact with that different gravity. We're shown red bricks pouring from a hallway only to then be introduced to various rooms made up of those same red bricks. A small checkers board on a table, followed by the larger one later on. This game is a masterclass of pacing and concept introduction. It takes its time without ever wasting yours. Every time we see something new, it felt like just the right time to see it. It's been a long time since I've gotten this much out of a game that took me less than 3 hours to beat, much less one that has absolutely zero interactivity or gameplay mechanics. Pools kept its promise. Not once do you encounter an enemy or a pursuer or any danger at all. The game unsettles you through its atmosphere alone. Even the one jump scare barely qualifies as such, and is at the end of the game serving more as a revelation to the reality of the lights that have been watching you the whole time than an attempt to scare you for fear's sake. I know that I've shown most of the game's major sequences here in this video already, but there are some minor things I left out. If you're a fan of liminal spaces, analog horror, or Backrooms content, then I seriously urge you to go experience this for yourself. Maybe show it to a friend who hasn't seen it all yet and experience it with them. It's such a short time investment at less than 3 hours, roughly the length of your average movie these days, and it's less than $10 on Steam. So I encourage you to go support the developers and experience Pools for yourself. Also, thank you everyone for sticking around to the end of the video. I know this one was really different from my usual stuff, but I've always loved weird horror things like this. And the second I got the idea for the video, I knew I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about it until I made it. I had a great time with this one, and kind of want to start doing some more horror stuff like this, so if you have any suggestions for something you'd like to see me cover like this, please feel free to leave a comment and tell me your ideas. I hope you'll consider liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already. Members of the channel get early access to most of my videos, exclusive posts, and access to live stream replays. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, that's all I've got for you.